Woo-hoo-hoo. Here we go, guys. And there goes my fish. That's the way to start this day. It's all about frog fishing. Let's go. Well, if you're anything like me, when somebody says frog fishing, you probably just feel something in your gut, in your heart. It's literally like the same thing if someone says pizza to me, you know, it's just like everything in my body is just like, oh my gosh. Anyways, I think there are 3 mistakes that a lot of guys make when they're fishing a frog, that if you can correct these things, you're gonna start catching a lot more fish on a frog. So stay tuned, it's gonna be a good one. Frogs. It's something that we all love to throw. The frog is just special, right? Because there's nothing better really in bass fishing than a top water blow up. But then you add in a frog, you add in the ability to be able to throw it around literally any type of cover you want to, vegetation, wood, rock, and be able to see fish come up on a frog. It's just amazing. And the best thing about a frog is it typically catches a better than average fish. You can fish it in ponds, you can fish it in rivers, you can fish it in lakes. Frog fishing, as we know, is literally one of the best ways to go out and catch a bass. And not only one of the best ways, it's probably the most fun way ever to catch fish. However, one thing that you see a lot with a frog is guys missing fish on a frog or losing fish on a frog. And we're gonna talk a little bit about that today, but I'm gonna talk about 3 big mistakes that I see a lot of anglers just completely forget when it comes to fishing a frog. So let's jump right into it. All right, guys, the first mistake that I see a lot of guys do when they're fishing a frog is not setting your frog up for success. If you guys don't know, not every single frog is ready to go right out of the package. And the other thing is not all frogs that are on the market are created equal. There's a lot of differences in the frogs that are on the market. You literally have, you know, poppin' style frogs. You have more of the pointed nose, original style frogs. And now you have frogs made from just about every single big brand out there on the market. So the biggest thing that you can do in order to start catching more fish on a frog, and not only that, but start hooking up with those fish when they bite it, is really setting your frog up for success. And there's a few different modifications that I like to make to frogs when I get them right out of the package. The first modification that you guys can make to your frog, and this one is extremely important. This is gonna really help you to hook up with a lot more fish. And that is bending the hooks of your frog. Now, this is not something new. It's something you've probably seen on YouTube. I just wanna show you quick how I do it. What I typically do with a frog is I'm gonna take the frog just behind the barb, and I'm actually gonna just barely bend that hook up. Not a ton, I just want it to be bent up just a little bit. As far as degrees that I'm bending this up, it's very minute. It's a very minute bend. I basically just want to be able to run my fingers on this frog and actually have my fingers get a little bit hooked. The other thing that I like to do, as well as bending them up, I like to bend them out. Just a hair, guys. I'm literally just bending them up and out. And this is gonna take that hook point a little bit away from the frog. Now, with that being said, you are going to sacrifice a little bit of the ability to put this frog anywhere you want. If you bend those hooks up and out a little bit, you are going to get hung up a little bit more if you're fishing it around wood, if you're fishing it around pads, around vegetation. But to me, I would rather hang up a few more times while I'm fishing, but actually hook up with more fish. If you kind of go out with a standard frog, sometimes you can have about a 50-50 hook to land ratio. So 50% of the fish that actually bite that frog, you actually might hook up and land in the boat. And that's not good, especially if you're a tournament fisherman. Every bite is so critical, and not even for tournament fishermen. If you just want to go out and fun fish with your buddies, like if you want to beat your friend out there, which I know we all want to do, then modifying your hooks and bending them up and out just a hair is really going to help you to hook up with more fish. Now, another thing that I do like to do with my frogs is trim up the legs. When I get a frog right out of the package, I'm basically going to trim up about a 1/2 inch on one side, and I'm actually going to trim up about 1 inch on the other side. I like my legs a little bit shorter. As you can see, I have seen it happen a number of times where this can actually make the difference, not only just walking the bait, but actually make a big difference in actually, again, hooking up with fish. I have seen it before where fish will come up and they will bite the legs of a frog, and I can literally watch them as they swim away and they just have the legs of the frog like this. So I actually like to trim up. I mean, as you can see, it's fairly short on this side, a little bit shorter than I think most people like to do. Again, I do about 1 inch on one side, about a 1/2 inch on the other side. I keep my legs pretty short because I want fish, when they come up, to hit that bait, to really get everything, to get the body. And that, again, is gonna help me with my hookup ratio. All right, guys, another thing that I really like to do, and this is kind of a very specific modification that really applies to anytime I'm fishing some sort of scum mat. If I'm fishing some matted grass, whether that's like hydrilla or milfoil or coontail, or maybe it's just a scum mat where it's kind of like that cheese, what we call it a lot, I like to make some big modifications to the bait itself. I'm gonna show you those modifications real quick. I'm actually gonna take those legs and I'm gonna completely trim the legs off. If you're fishing a mat, I want that fish to hit the body and the body only. I don't want him to hit the legs at all or even catch any of the legs. So I'm gonna completely take those legs off. And the next thing that I'm gonna do, I'm actually going to add a little bit of weight to the frog. So a lot of times in this case, guys, I'm actually gonna take about 1/8 ounce weight and I'm gonna shove it through the little hook hole that comes out of my frog, and I'm gonna put that weight inside the frog. Depending on what type of frog you're using, you can't use this frog really for any other condition besides fishing it on a mat, because sometimes adding a little bit of weight like that will actually cause your frog to sink. Now, if you're fishing that bait over a mat, it's not gonna go through the mat. And what it does is it really creates almost like a wake across the mat. When you're dragging that bait across the mat, it actually will move the mat and it will move the water a little bit. And that really allows that bass to hone in on that frog. It really allows him to see it, to feel it, to hear it, because you're adding a little bit of weight. It's gonna add a little bit of clack in there as well. And you're really gonna start catching a lot more fish when it comes to fishing a mat with a frog. All right, guys, mistake number 2 is not changing up the cadence of your bait. Guys, a lot of us, when we go out and we go frog fishing, we typically pick up the 1 or 2 frogs that we really like, and a lot of times we're gonna fish them the same way. Maybe that's a simple walk the dog action, and obviously you're going to catch fish with that technique and with that cadence from time to time. But guys, I have seen it be huge to switch up your cadence. Whether that might be fishing that frog a lot faster, maybe walking it faster, maybe actually chugging it faster, and actually switching up the cadence to make it a lot slower when you're just barely moving that frog from side to side in the water. I really think cadence is a huge part of frog fishing that a lot of us don't pay attention to. I was fishing down in Florida several years back, and I was actually fishing a frog over fish that were on beds. I actually was working a frog very slow. I was actually catching males that were on beds. It was 1.5 pound, 2 pound males. But one really interesting thing about this day is I was actually fishing this bait over a bed, and I started reeling the bait fairly fast, and a big bass, like a 6-7 pounder, actually came up and nailed that bait as I was reeling it really, really fast. And it kind of just clicked with me. Maybe I need to start reeling this bait a little bit faster to get a bigger bite. It was night and day difference. I started chugging this frog extremely fast, and instead of the males getting this, it was really triggering these females that were sitting just off the bed to come up and hit it. And immediately I went from catching those 1.5 pound, 2 pound bass to catching 3s and 4s and 5 pound bass just by chugging that frog a lot faster. It was making the females react. It was a night and day difference between catching bigger bass and catching smaller bass. So on the flip side, guys, I remember fishing a tournament on the James River. This was a Bassmaster Open, and during that tournament, I was fishing a frog a lot. I was fishing it around wood. I was fishing around lily pads a lot. A frog on the James River is no secret. A lot of guys fish frogs on the James River. And I remember the first day I went out, I fished my frog kind of the normal way, right? Just walking the dog. And I really didn't do so hot during that first day. I think I was like over 100th place, like 120 or 150. Like I was way down the leaderboard. And for whatever reason, the next day I went out and I felt like I just needed to slow down. And guys, again, this made a huge difference in the quality of fish that I was catching. I went out that next day and I started fishing extremely slow. I felt like everybody was fishing a frog the same way, and I started fishing it extremely slow. And guys, I caught a 6-pound, 9-ounce bass that day. I also ended up catching almost 14 pounds on the James River in the middle of summer, which was a decent bag, and it literally jumped me up like 70 or 80 spots, simply slowing that frog down and working it a lot slower. So anytime you guys go out and you go frog fishing, experiment with your cadence. Don't just fish it the same way, walking back and forth. Try chugging it really fast. Try fishing it extremely, extremely slow. You're gonna find a cadence that the bass like, and it might change every single day you go out, but if you can find that cadence that other fishermen aren't doing and aren't paying attention to, you're gonna outfish guys on a frog. You're gonna catch bigger fish, you're gonna catch more fish. So pay attention to the cadence of your bait. All right, guys, let's get into mistake number 3 that a lot of anglers make, and that is really not fishing a frog enough. Now, this might sound a little bit funny to you, but guys, I really feel like the majority of the fishermen out there will pick up a frog when they're fishing around vegetation, right? That was kind of the first thing that frogs were really even made for, is matted vegetation and grass and pads. Now, with that being said, guys, a frog is not just made for vegetation. I think that a frog actually works best when you're fishing it around wood cover, because a lot of guys in that situation are simply going to pick up different baits. They're going to pick up a spinner bait or a square bill or some sort of soft plastic to flip and pitch. And guys, that's where a frog can be extremely deadly. We actually saw Dean Rojas bring this kind of onto the bass fishing scene a number of years ago, where he started fishing a frog around shallow wood cover a tremendous amount. And guys, it's not just wood cover. You can fish a frog underneath docks. You can fish a frog on a riprap bank. You can fish a frog anywhere. And guys, I would highly suggest that you do this. The thing is if you find a frog bite where other people aren't finding frog bites, I'm telling you, if you go out and catch 5, 6, 7 bass in a day, your fish are gonna be bigger. You're gonna have a higher chance at catching a big bass, and you're gonna outfish all your friends. And who doesn't wanna outfish their buddies? I know that is the sole reason why I get up in the morning, is to outfish some of my friends. Not really, but you know what I'm saying. I can remember fishing a tournament on a highly pressured body of water in central Ohio. It was the spring of the year, and everybody was fishing crankbaits. Everybody was flipping soft plastics, and guess what? I was fishing a frog. I was skipping it under trees, under overhanging tree limbs. And although I didn't have a lot of weight in that tournament, I think I had 8.5 pounds with my 5 fish. I won that tournament against about 20 other boats because I was fishing a frog when everybody else was fishing something different. So guys, I can't stress to you how important it is to just go out and fish a frog. If you want to gain confidence in a frog, don't bring anything else in your boat except for a frog, and go out and catch you some bass. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like. Subscribe to the channel and comment below if you have a question. This channel is growing like crazy and I love it. I'll see you guys in the next video.